All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er update from Thursday down in Santa Clara. Busy day down there in Santa Clara. A lot going on. So we talked to a number of different players. 4 different players came to the podium: Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Brandon Aiyuk. We'll get to them in just a second. But Steve Wilks, according to reports, the Atlanta Falcons have asked permission to interview him as a head coaching candidate. Adam Peters, Niners executive, is a finalist for the Commanders general manager job. From over the weekend or from the last couple of days, Terrence Mitchell signs to the Niners practice squad. So the Niners had a cornerback there. We already covered those things. But George Kittle spoke today. He's in his 7th year, and I asked him if he feels more urgency to win the Super Bowl this year because he is 30 years old. And he said, he started really feeling the urgency in 2019, and it hasn't stopped. And he feels the same level of urgency really since 2019.
George, this team has had a lot of opportunities to win it all. And as you age in the game, you're 30 now. Do you have greater urgency, greater determination to get that ring this year because you got so close in the past and this might be your best chance at one?
I mean, I feel great. So, I'm going to play as long as I possibly can. And, no, I don't think my sense of urgency has been pretty urgent since 2019. I kind of figured that out. I think it takes a year or two to get to be in the NFL to realize the sense of urgency that you have to have when you're on a good football team. But yeah, I feel like I've been pretty urgent since then. My first 2 years, I was just trying to survive the NFL, and then something clicked, figured it out, started playing at a high level. And then you realize, especially you have guys like Joe Staley, Garrett Selleck, they were two of my best friends are on a team. I've been in the league without them longer than I was with them. I played with them for 3 years, and I played with them without them for 4 years. So it's just I understand the sense of urgency, and I think it takes young guys a little bit, but majority of this team fully understands that. And I don't windows closing, all that stuff. I don't know. I'm just going to keep playing football at a high level until they tell me I can't anymore.
It's emphasized, Kittle did, that the 49ers this week just need to continue to get better. He was asked about Brock Purdy having playoff experience. He said, "Man, he looked great today." He said, "I'm never really worried about Brock Purdy." He says he really has a lot of faith in Purdy. He was asked about Kyle Shanahan, and he says, he really appreciates how Kyle teaches his players on both sides of the ball about not just what to do, but why they're doing each and everything. And he says he feels like the offense is peaking right now in the month of January. He says, we have a unique focus. Clearly, Kittle feels like the Niners are ready to fire here in the playoffs. And then Brandon Aiyuk came out and spoke. He was asked about Juwan Jennings, who returned to practice today. And he said that, JJ brings a tough mindset and a real energy to the wide receiver room. He said it was a real disappointment to not be named a Pro Bowler, and said that, he feels like he kind of made reference to, I'll get some payback in the playoffs. I mean, he didn't say that word for word, but he kind of said, hey, these other receivers have to roll through here, so we'll see how it goes. But he admitted he was disappointed that he didn't make the Pro Bowl. He says he does set statistical goals for himself, and that they change as the season goes on. He said he hit some of his goals and he missed some of his other goals. I asked him about going across the middle, and just seems like that's one of his favorite routes, those crossers. And he kind of admitted that he does enjoy going across the middle of the field.
And Brandon, a lot of receivers don't like to run in the middle of the field. You seem to thrive in the middle of the field. Is there a route that you prefer or you would consider your favorite route?
Anytime you get to go across the middle, you get a chance for big explosive plays, and in the way that Brock is able to see it and throw it on time and pace, it just makes for a good offense. So really anywhere on the field, I'm trying to catch football. So, but I think through the middle of the field, we definitely got some work into there.
And then he was asked a little bit about his contract, and he says the Niner front office has talked to his agent regarding a contract extension, but he doesn't know anything about it yet because he himself has not talked to his agent about what the Niners have said to his agent. Fred Warner took the podium and said that, he really remembers how it feels to lose in the postseason and how those things kind of stick with you. He said that last year in that NFC Championship game against the Eagles that they felt like they had a chance all the way through, And then when you go back and you look at the tape and you see Brock getting knocked out and you realize, man, we never had a chance from that point on. I asked him about the rest. These guys have been hitting each other since the middle of July. And he said, you know what? The rest is much needed, that he feels great, that his body feels great, that you get that rest and it just tightens your focus.
Fred, you guys been banging heads since July. I thought maybe your best collective game was off the bye, the Jacksonville game. How do you feel with the rest, and how much do you think that rest is going to help you guys in the division round?
Yeah, it's really helpful. I feel great. I think the rest is much needed. And you talk about a lot of guys didn't play many snaps in this past game either. So it's almost like you're taking 2 weeks of just letting the body recover and then mentally getting your mind right for what we got ahead. And I do think it'll be advantageous. And you mentioned it after that bye week during the season, we came out flying, and we got to make sure we do the same thing this time.
He was also asked about Chase Young, and he said that he loves how Chase Young bought in immediately, that he plays with violence, that he bought into his role, that he's not a me guy, that he's really all about winning games and winning a ring. And he said he loved that about Chase Young. He was asked about Eric Armstead, and he said, you know what? Eric Armstead is a very consistent player that is really good consistently week in, week out. And he was asked, who are you rooting for this weekend? Are you rooting for D'Amico and the Texans in the playoffs? And he said, I hope everybody loses, which made the room laugh because obviously everybody can't lose. But he's like, yeah, if everybody loses, then we don't have to play anybody. So that kind of cracked us up. And then Nick Bosa came in the room, and he was asked about the process during the bye week. And he said, you know what? It's really been a good process. He said 2 solid practices, a couple days off, and then 2 solid practices. The Niners will be in pads on Friday, and then 2 more days off. And he thought it was perfect to get them refreshed and rested and focused for what lies ahead. Bosa did admit that he is rooting this weekend for D'Amico Ryans and the Texans. He was asked about, how about Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins? And he's like, well, I didn't really talk to McDaniel that much. So he's really more rooting for D'Amico and the Texans than he is for McDaniel and the Dolphins. And then he was also asked about Chase Young, and he said, Chase Young's going to need to play more without Clelin Ferrell. And that he mentioned that Clelin Ferrell's really a high effort guy and that they'll miss that effort that Clelin provides, but that Chase Young and the remaining defensive ends all have to step up and play a bigger role in what they do. And then Bosa also was the winner of the Gary Niver Award for professionalism and cooperation with the local media, as awarded by the Football Writers Association of America. And Matt Mayoko presented him his award after the press conference. Brian Griese, though, according to a couple reports, is potentially an offensive coordinator candidate in Chicago. Of course, Griese just finished his 2nd season with the 49ers, and the Niners can block him from becoming the offensive coordinator in Chicago by simply naming him the offensive coordinator. Kyle Shanahan now mans both roles. He's the head coach and the offensive coordinator. The Niners don't have a formal offensive coordinator. So if they don't want Griese to leave, they can just say, hey, Griese, you're the offensive coordinator, and he'll be forced to stay. As far as practice today, as far as guys who did not practice, there was no Christian McCaffrey. Dre Greenlaw set it out. Tayshaun Gibson did not practice, and John Feliciano did not practice. But as far as the guys that did practice, Eric Armstead was a returner to practice. George Kittle practiced. Jair Brown, who's had a knee sprain, was back out there. George Odom, the Pro Bowl special teamer, was back practicing, as was Ambry Thomas and Jawan Jennings. So that gives you pretty much a rundown from everything in Santa Clara today. And, of course, we are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're open in Corte Madera and Emeryville, and they're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Now, it's all great. I always say get the brisket chili. But, man, the pulled pork is fantastic. The barbecue ribs, the house-made sausages, everything they have at Pig and a Pickle is absolutely top-notch. So check them out in Corte Madera and Emeryville. Go say hi to Damon and Mary and tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. And, of course, we are also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. And check that link in the description. Use the promo code Krug, and they will match you up to your first $100. Now, this week in Underdog, this is what I'm going with this week. I'm going with Jaden Reed, higher than 48.5 receiving yards. Kareem Hunt, higher than 24.5 rushing yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown going against the Rams. I'm saying higher than 7.5 receptions. Josh Allen, higher than 220.5 passing yards. And Isaiah Pacheco, higher than 64.5 rushing yards. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy and, of course, Pig in a Pickle. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.